silver bullet, huh? Huh?
The man Uncle Red had gone to see was more than a gunsmith. He was, Uncle Red said, an old-world craftsman, a sort of wizard of weapons. He confirmed the high-grade silver content of my crucifix and Marty's medallion, melted them down, and molded them into a silver bullet. Marty had read all the legends about werewolves. And though they differed on several minor points, they all agreed on one. It takes silver to kill a werewolf. And we were taking no chances.
Welcome to Franchise Killer, a podcast where we pick movie franchises or wannabe franchises, review them film by film, and see where things went wrong. Or
Hee-haw, hee-haw, he always doing that.
Or right. I'm Reese. Across from me we have
David.
To his left,
Irina.
To her left,
Reverend Lowe.
Also known as
Noah.
And to his left,
Ah, the mother.
yes, the mom to three of us.
The mother. Sounds like a...
What's your name?
Oh,
Just
what
say
do you
it.
want to call me?
You can be Catherine.
Okay, I'll be Catherine.
Yeah, your actual name.
That's fine.
And someone who thinks he's a little too old to be playing the Hardy Boys Meet Reverend Werewolf we have.
Hey, Jay. You guys are stealing all my quotes.
I knew I had to get to that hee-haw joke before somebody did.
Oh,
And today, or tonight, whenever you happen to be listening, we are talking about Silver Bullet, the 1985 film directed by Dan Attias, or Attias. I think it's Attias. He's only directed this film, but he's a prominent TV director slash producer slash... Actually, just director.
Film extraordinaire.
He's had his hands in popular shows like Miami Vice, Beverly Hills 90210, The Sopranos, The Wire, 6 Feet Under, True Blood, Entourage, and Deadwood. So a lot of HBO shows. He has a good relationship with HBO.
He did, what was it, The Walking Dead and Lost as well, didn't he?
I don't think it was Walking Dead. I think you probably read Deadwood or
Maybe.
something.
Maybe that's what it was.
Maybe. I'll recheck. You're probably right.
This is kind of
But
like his
still-
only comedy.
It is kind of like comedic
Wait,
at times.
did you watch a comedy, AJ?
What's funny
Yeah,
is
this
this
was
movie is
hilarious.
kind of
We're all cracking jokes here. I mean, I'm a big fan of Gene Wilder, and you throw in Richard Pryor into the mix. Silver Streak?
I've never seen that movie, but I'm sure you'll have some interesting insights.
Murder on a Train Ride?
No.
The more you say, it's not clicking.
Oh, that's the one.
And the movie stars Silver Bullet, that is, not Silver Streak. Gary Busey, Everett McGill, Corey Haim, Megan Follows, Terry O'Quinn, Bill Smitrovich, Robin Groves, Lawrence Tierney, and Kent Broadhurst. I don't know
Smitrovich.
75% of those names, but let's roll with it.
Terry O'Quinn was in Lost.
That's true.
Yeah, he played Locke. That's true.
Don't tell me what I can and can't do.
And we have a screenplay by Stephen King. He adapted his own, or he rewrote his own novelette, as he calls it, of Cycle of the Werewolf for this film. And honestly, I think the screenplay for this movie is better than the original material. Again, it was based off Cycle of the Werewolf. Cycle of the Werewolf, for people who don't know, was kind of a commissioned piece for Stephen King. Someone wanted him to make like a calendar, a special calendar where he'd write like 500 words for each month, and it'd be its own, each month would be its own isolated werewolf story in this town of, what's it called?
Tarker's Mill.
Tarker's Mills. Yep. He kind of got disheartened with it like halfway through, but found footing with this character of Marty where he kind of latched onto. So the story really only took form after 4 or 5 months of these individual stories had already been told. And then for the rest of the months up until I think November, it's Marty's story. So it kind of evolved into this novella or novelette, as you want to call it. It's not one of his most highly regarded works, and I think even Stephen King knows that. Obviously, he changed a lot for this movie, and it kind of shows.
It's interesting they chose to do this one versus his other bigger works. I wonder who pitched this idea.
Yeah, it also came out, I think his novelette came out 83 or 80, so literally there's a 2-year turnaround for this movie. So it's kind of a quick, they were like, we just want to make something Stephen King. I think it was like the 10th Stephen King movie, and he was starting to really be a hot commodity.
Yeah, he was big since the late 60s, early 70s, I think. Another fun fact about that calendar, they already hired a guy to do the artwork for each of the months, and I think he got most of it done. And they kind of canceled the calendar, I believe. And so they took those stories that he wrote and put them in that novella, and they took the artwork that he used for the months.
Yes, and apparently it was like they were happy that he wanted to end up taking it in this new direction, because it was like the stealth project to get him to write more than he was actually commissioned to do.
Well, and the artist ended up doing all of his artwork until more modern times. So he kind of got a good deal out of it, because from then on, if you look at old or original 80s through 2000s artwork, I think he's the one who did it. So
yeah, the artwork is actually more notable than the the book itself. Everyone loves his name is escaping me. Everyone's shouting at it who's listening to this and is a Stephen
it's
King
that
fan.
guy. It's Steve McQueen.
But yeah, it's much more known for the art style, and the movie was actually used a lot of that as an influence for its werewolf and all that. Even though the werewolf design in this still draws criticism. Anyway, for those that are new to this show, on this podcast we first go over our thoughts on the film before revisiting it for the episode. Then we dive into the story, break it down bit by bit, and talk about the more significant moments. Then towards the end of the show, we give our brief reviews and numbered scores, along with an analysis on the health of the franchise and whether or not this film hurt it. It's a one and done, so obviously no franchise there, but there's a few interesting morsels that we can grab onto here. That there was kind of designs on a sequel.
If you think about it, he kind of beat everybody to the punch as far as interconnected universes. You know, the Stephen King universe is not really talked about as much as the larger scheme.
Yeah, and that's what that Castle Rock show is actually. That's it's all a whole bunch of different Stephen King stories.
Yep.
Kind of, they do occupy the same world. So that's finally reaching cinema or TV screens as well.
And this was done back in the 70s and 80s, so it's kind of crazy. And if you didn't know, this Harker's Mills? Tarkin's Mills, got it.
No,
Tarker's Mills is actually between Derry from It and Castle Rock. Is that the one?
Misery.
From
That's
Misery.
cool.
Yes.
So-
and
He likes Maine for
there
some
are
reason.
some other terms in there that actually connect to Salem's Lot.
Oh,
Okay.
So
did not know that.
when you get into this, you'll see he'll say it. And there's a whole world of Stephen King in which a lot of the terms that are in here, like places, will connect to all of his other movies.
See, that's
Pretty cool.
the universe, the Stephen King universe. Now, I'm curious, do you remember?
Steven-verse.
I have a question for you, Catherine. Do you remember when this came out?
No.
You don't? Okay.
I was gonna, so we reference our mom a lot on this podcast, and for those that don't know,
I don't know why.
she is the mother to me, Reese, to Irina, and Noah. So she
Wait,
is.
who's Noah?
Oh, sorry,
is
Reverend Lowe.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Reverend
I'm mother
Chad.
to Reverend Lowe.
Yeah, and we brought you onto this episode because we do have this movie Silver Bullet is exclusively special to our family. It's actually one of the kind of outliers for most people who consume Stephen King movies, books / content. But for us, it's kind of become a staple of the Halloween season. We always watch Silver Bullet, and it's very nostalgic for us. So who knows? That may have an influence on our scores.
We may have a problem with
Yeah,
that.
towards the end of this, we're trying to temper our nostalgia a little bit for the
Yeah.
review portion of this and look at it more analytically. But I did want to come to you first, Mom. Do you remember when you first saw this, and why is this movie? Did this movie become so special to you that you thought you should share
wanted
this?
to
You should
share
share
with my
this with
family.
us. And
Oh my gosh.
and how did this kind of evolve to be a Halloween staple?
Okay, one thing that Stephen King is really good about as a writer, he's able to portray small town life and interactions with people, and he does very good character development. So when he projects any kind of movie or story, you definitely get immersed into that world. So whenever this movie came out, because I kind of like making seasonal things prominent in our family. So when a season happens, like Halloween zone or fall zone or Christmas zone, I have a set of movies that go along with that. And this is sort of the connection that I make with my children as far as movies go.
Mm-hmm. Is there something you like about werewolves being combined with Stephen King? Like the Stephen King kind of feel combined with the fun of having a werewolf?
Yes, because I like the basic old werewolf story. Mm-hmm. The old werewolf story is a curse. So it happened, if you look at some of the older versions of the werewolf story, it's kind of a curse upon a person, and it's a little unknown as to why the curse was imposed upon that person, but it happened to them. Mm-hmm. And usually the person is good, basically, and doesn't understand why it's happening to them. So they try to figure out a way to get out of it.
Yeah.
And so that basic theme is kind of going into all of these films. I see it in this one, in Silver Bullet. So the man who is the werewolf has a curse upon him. He doesn't understand why it is. He wants to do, or she, he wants to do good. He's trying to prevent bad, but then he's torn. So I see this theme into the werewolf theme, where there's a passion that's strong in them, but at the same time, they have a good in them. So it's a war between good and evil in their own soul.
His idea of how he's using it for good is it's a very thin line, I would say.
Perhaps.
And before I move on to the other people, the other nobodies here on this podcast, do you remember the first time you saw this movie?
No, I don't really.
Do you remember how
what
the
year?
age range or?
I know that I was kind of young. I know that I was a little past high school. I only remember that whenever I saw it, I was maybe early college zone.
So probably not a theatrical experience. Otherwise, it might have been a more
it wasn't
memorable.
a theatrical experience at all.
Okay. Mm-mm. All right. Let's move on to the rest of our group here.
I'm very potty.
David, had you seen this movie before this episode? I know all the answers to these except for one person. So
yeah,
good.
I've definitely seen this. I've probably seen this a good handful of times.
A
Because
good handful? Is that like
it's like more than 5, but less than 10.
Like you're struggling to hold it within
It's at
one
least not
hand?
a
It's like
or
it's actually
you can
oozing
hold
out
it?
of
No,
my
it's
fingers.
more face cards than like. cards.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I would go over to the Payne household and we would watch it every Halloween. So it's definitely been close to my heart now since 2.
And you're just sitting in the background like, yeah, this is great, guys.
Okay, I'm just gonna say, like, Stephen King is a major Halloween staple in the family. I think I can name at least 4 Halloween movies that he covers. So we have Silver Bullet, we have Something Wicked This Way Comes, we have
That's not
no,
Stephen
dang
King.
it, I'm already wrong.
That's Ray Bradbury.
All right,
Yes.
Witches.
Nope.
Nope. That's Road Doll.
Maybe
Christine,
Yes.
Shining.
Yes.
The Shining,
Shining.
Shining.
Carrie.
Creep Show.
oh, Creep Show.
Yeah. All right. So David has seen it a good handful of times. Irina.
Yeah, I've seen this so many times, and it was always one of my favorite ones to put on. I have strong memories of being at the house, and then I'll hear the music start up from another room, and then I'll always come out of my room and go Silver Bullet. You know,
I know.
come downstairs and I'm like, we're gonna watch Silver Bullet. I'm so excited.
Someone make cookies.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Chocolate
And
chip.
so I think part of it is just that I have this love of werewolf stories too. That not even just from a symbolic level. I just, for some reason, they're just so fascinating to me. And yet there aren't enough werewolf movies or content. And I never understood why.
I agree.
There's a lot of werewolf content, but very little that are actually good.
Yeah,
I agree.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I
And
agree.
it seems like they can't ever quite get the practical effects of the werewolf
Yes.
Yeah.
perfectly right. But
Yeah.
Noah.
So that's it.
Noah, have you seen this movie?
No.
That's BS.
Sometime a long time ago, maybe. I don't remember.
In the past, at maybe one point.
Okay, Noah.
I don't know. I can't really remember it though.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
no,
sure-
exactly what Irina said.
Yeah, I'm sure you echo everything.
applies to me.
okay.
AJ, you're the one I'm most interested. I doubt you've seen. No, I won't put words in your mouth.
Favoritism.
AJ, have you seen this movie?
I had not. And actually, I'm somewhat of a stranger to Stephen King other than like The Green Mile and Shawshank Redemption.
So
Which are good
both
movies.
great.
Both
you're more
of those
familiar
are
with
great
his like
movies.
dramatic turns, less of the
More
horror.
serious.
Yeah, I mean, The Shining is a staple. And then what was that Arnold movie?
Running Man.
Running Man, yeah.
Yeah.
Which not a lot of people think Stephen King when they see Running Man.
I didn't know it was
Yeah.
him.
And then
Yeah,
there you
but
have it.
even Shawshank, most people don't
I
realize
love
that.
that one.
Yeah. I have seen this movie, Silver Bullet, quite a
Once.
few times.
Maybe twice.
A few times.
Okay.
That said, it is one of those movies, as I was watching it, once you've seen it a couple times as a just Halloween tradition, all the other times you see subsequently after that are not like intent watches. It's more like this is the great background horror movie. So watching it and focusing on it kind of put a not new perspective on it, but like it refreshed my memory more than I thought about, this movie. Like I know every scene of this movie, but it was, I realized I had not actually focused on it in a long time.
In a critical sense.
Yeah. So, because you kind of, once you've seen a movie so many times, you just kind of go with the flow when you're watching it. And you can take as many breaks as you want because you know exactly what's happening. But for the episode, nope, I gotta focus my eyes on this, and I was it was kind of fun revisiting it and actually focusing on it more.
Right.
So yeah, but no, I've seen this movie a million times probably.
A million? How
Yes,
old
a
are you,
million
Reese?
times. I am 5. I don't even know. I'm 5. Yeah.
However many times I put it on every Halloween.
Yeah. With that said, David, do you want to give us a quick call to action before we
Quick.
More like a howl.
Ours have been kind of long-winded recently.
All right,
so-
you're right. All right, I'll make it quick.
All right.
That's the wolf
Werewolves
saying.
in London.
Yeah. Oh, give us that 5-star. All right. Yeah. Honestly, the biggest thing you can do for us is follow us, subscribe to us, download us. We're here for you guys on all major platforms. If you follow us on Instagram, we're there. We have the Twitter. And I think the most important thing is on Apple. Those 5-star reviews really, really help us stand out on the algorithm. It shows up for more people. And, maybe tell a family member or a friend.
All right. With that said, let's get into this story.
It began in May. And every month after that, whenever the moon was full, it happened again. And again.
What was that? It's over there. Don't point that at me.
Nobody knew who or what was responsible.
Come on.
They only knew it had to be stopped. Now, from the master of mystery and suspense, Stephen King's Silver Bullet.
The story begins in a small town in Maine, Tarker's Mills. It's a nice place with nice people, but there's something foul in the air. The town is haunted, and not by ghosts, but by a series of brutal murders, mystery abound, preachers, werewolves. On this journey, we'll follow Jane Kozla, the narrator, her brother Marty, a paraplegic, and their Uncle Red, a well-intentioned bad influence. Now, a railroad worker is beheaded, a pregnant woman is torn apart, a drunk man is impaled by the floorboards, and a young boy named Chad is ripped to pieces. Pieces! Townspeople go hunting for the perpetrator, but to no avail, and there is further bloodshed. Curfews are set in place, and the 4th of July canceled.
So this rewatching this, I realized how many of these sequences that scarred me throughout this movie.
I'm so sorry.
No, they are no longer scarring. It was almost like, oh, this scene, it's not so bad. But the first scene being the opening scene where we have this railroad worker, and his face just gets totally, or his head is just
gone.
Yep.
He's beheaded.
He's been beheaded.
Swiped
Yes.
off.
This was a kind of a shocking scene for me.
sorry. I'm
no,
so
you're
sorry.
fine. Don't worry about it.
It wasn't worse than when you showed us Exorcist.
I'm
and
so
we were
sorry.
5.
Oh no, we were not. Fun.
Actually,
Am I gonna
some
be
of us
saying
were.
sorry for the most of this.
Mom, we can put a moratorium on saying sorry. I'm glad I'm
Okay.
into these movies. It is
Oh, yeah,
because of
it's
you
fine.
that we are
We have
engaged with.
it's
Exposed.
almost like bragging rights for
Yeah.
some people. Yeah.
So this kind of I think this first scene does a great job at establishing how much of a force this creature is. We don't quite know it's a werewolf yet, but we know there is something that can literally, in one swipe, take a dude's head off.
And it's
Yeah.
clean.
Well, also, there's that aspect of it actually being comedic, you
Yeah.
know, and you
Oh,
know
yeah.
exactly what kind of movie you're going into.
Yeah.
Like, this is brutal, but it's also kind of hilarious.
Yes.
in
I'm
its
gonna
brutality.
bust your ass.
This
Bust
movie,
his
though,
chops.
it kind of... This movie kind of balances a fine line, though, where
Yeah.
it still is scary,
Right.
while still being almost a little over the top and funny.
Yeah. Creep Show, if you've seen
Yeah.
Creep
Yes,
Show, is
exactly.
kind of along that same line of it's gallows humor, essentially.
Stephen King is very good at blending horror with a slightly comedic side. It's
called
So it's
macabre.
well, I don't know if macabre is that, but I
dark
know that
humor.
he likes to put things in a comedic light, even if he's doing something that's very horrific.
Oh, yeah.
So this begins the spate of murders across Tarker's Mills. We're introduced to Corey Haim as Marty, played by Corey Haim. Mm-hmm. He's kind of with his friend Brady. Sorry, Chad.
Yeah,
Tormenting,
get it right.
tormenting his sister Jane. Ruins her stockings as Brady throws a snake at her. What are our first impressions of, let's say, Jane and Marty here are kind of, they're almost co-leads. Like Jane,
They are.
Like Marty has more screen time, but Jane is like almost the
She's a
storyteller.
narrator.
She
a narrator.
narrates.
Yeah, she's almost kind of weirdly also the spirit of the movie. Mm-hmm. What are y'all's thoughts?
That's a true brother-sister relationship right there.
Yeah, I was gonna say they definitely sell you on the fact that they're brother and sister. You see things like, Game of Thrones, and it's kind of like,
Not like that.
That's
Not
a
that
really
kind of
good
not a
brother-sister
brother and
relationship.
sister.
Niece and uncle, or vice versa.
Yeah, but I really like their relationship, even though they don't quite get along.
The thing I note is that people go into different situations when they're younger, and so they have a little bit of problem getting to know one another and understand the wisdom that comes from bonding with a sister and a brother. And they may not understand each other at first, but they are growing. So you can see the growing development in this film.
I have to commend these child actors for portraying that part so well, because I think her name is Megan Follows. I don't know why
Yeah.
I know that, but I saw that somewhere. And,
Well, it's kind of a different name.
yeah, it's like Megan. But the girl that plays Jane she does such a good job of carrying that resentment of her situation, not so much her brother necessarily. I think she doesn't realize her resentment is not at her brother. It's, you know,
Her
it's at the
parents,
situation
yeah.
she's in of essentially being forced to be his caretaker and being overlooked constantly by
Yeah.
the parents.
I think this movie does such a good job, and it's partially the screenplay, also the director, of having kids that are more dynamic than you're used to, where they're flawed. You see the immaturities. They portray the immaturity correctly. They're not
Right.
these precocious, like annoying presences throughout this movie.
Exactly.
Like you see I see the sister's side, I see the brother's side. I understand the relationship. It seems
Yeah.
surprisingly natural for a movie that actually is pretty cheesy at times.
Right.
Like as cheesy as this movie gets, the core of this film is Marty and Jane,
Right.
and they are both so well portrayed. I feel like
Well, if there's one
yeah.
thing that Stephen King understands, it's building characters.
Yes.
Oh,
And
yeah.
That is it.
And
Yes.
because in this movie he actually wrote the screenplay for it versus other movies of his that were adapted he wasn't a part of. I feel like you can feel that in this, and it's the fact that it's less horror filled. I think
Right.
is you sacrifice horror for that character building, and it makes you appreciate it more. There's something charming about it.
I
Yeah.
think that you and I, Mom, have had this conversation before, but a lot of Stephen King work actually reminds me of Steven Spielberg work as far as their relationship
Yes,
to the
I agree.
characters, because both are very good at capturing childhood
Yes.
or, you know, that
Yeah.
innocence, but
Yes.
also not, they're being children, so they're not necessarily fully innocent the way parents or adults like to believe them to be, you know?
Right.
And they have such a good grasp on capturing that
And
element.
there's something about this film. If you look at Marty, there is an innocence about him. Whether it's captured or not, it plays. There's a theme about Marty being kind of innocent and humble, and his sister is made to care for him in a capacity that not normal sisters would normally be called to do.
Right.
So she's being forced into a position that is not a normal one, but that needs more effort and more attention and more work. And so, but at the same time, his perspective on that is he sees her.
Yeah.
He's humble about that. He recognizes her sacrifice, and he's very pure in a way. And I think that plays into the movie later.
And I think that's part of why I think we really like this movie, at least the Payne family.
Yeah.
Is I see a lot of parallels between how we were growing
Right.
up, where we do some crappy things to each other, but then
Don't lie, Reese. You were the one doing the crappy things.
Yeah, but then we would feel bad about it.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, like it's like I'd be I
think-
I actually feel for this. Like
So which
I
one's
just
the
did a
werewolf?
crappy thing. Yeah.
One of the most relatable parts is Janie walking up to the house, and then the parents are like, Janie, help your brother. And then just that hesitation and basically like, you know,
exactly
going
what
back
she's
and
thinking.
then kind of aggressively helping, you know, where you're like, I'm still helping, but I'm
not happy
Don't
about
want to
it.
be doing
And,
it.
and then Marty, who can't help the fact that he needs to be helped, recognizes her sacrifice. He sees her.
Oh, yeah.
He is
That's
gives
what
her-
that's what I love
Yeah.
about
Oh, yeah.
him.
He's a pure child.
Yes.
And he gives
He's
the
kind of
money
trapped
to her.
Yeah.
in his
Yeah,
choice
I
of
love
friends
him
as well.
for that.
He
Yeah,
knows that
he is.
Chad is a Chad, but
Yeah.
Yes.
he's his only friend that actually, hangs out with him.
That's
Yeah,
Exactly.
That's true.
He's in a kind of precarious position.
Can I
Yeah,
go ahead and
no,
make a new
he doesn't
rule?
cry
What's-
whenever he dies.
My new rule is that we're going to call him Brady now. 'Cause, no, I'm like,
I'm
man,
sorry.
we're all calling him
Confused.
Chad.
Yeah.
I'm
no,
sorry.
he is
He's
Chad.
Brady.
He's Brady.
All right. So we are now introduced to Red, played by Gary Busey. I'm gonna say, guys, I love Gary Busey in this movie.
Me too. He's the best.
And
I love him.
I think before he kind of went off the deep end, unfortunately, I know he's had a kind of troubled, he was in an accident, and we kind of look at him in a different light now. But he was genuinely good in this movie. I think he's the most natural of any of the actors in this movie. Every scene he's in, and that's probably because a lot of his lines were actually improv.
Exactly.
There you go.
But he just comes off as this, just that it's that
More
uncle.
real.
You
Yeah.
know, he's like, yep, this is that guy. Like we all have that guy in our families.
What's funny is that I watched and listened to quite a few reviews that people had of this movie, and there's those that loved it, there's those that hated it, and those in between. But every single one had to give Busey credit. Like,
Yes,
it's like I don't like
agree.
this movie, but Busey though, he
Yeah.
was on it.
I want to know how you feel, AJ, being a fresh viewer. Like, what was it? Which characters stood out to you more immediately, or which ones, grabbed you, I guess?
Well, Gary Busey, of course. I mean, just what you said, and like you said, early Busey is iconic. I mean, he's his own
Right.
thing.
Right.
He's unique and like he's natural. Like you said, this is all improv for him. And at first, I thought the main character's acting was a little bit stiff, especially compared to his sister. But he kind of grew on you later on,
Right.
a little bit more.
Especially with his interaction with his uncle, which is Gary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that might be part of what helped was the charisma and maybe the way that Busey approached the character and ad-libbed sort of helped Corey Haim.
Haim.
Yeah, Haim.
It's Haim.
Right? Haim?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Corey
it helped
Haim.
having like Terry O'Quinn, as from Lost, already familiar
Right.
with him, and it's kind of troublesome. It seems like, especially being in Maine, a lot of people had different accents. So I was trying to place the region,
Right.
especially the Reverend, and I don't know, but
Yeah, his friend, that girl that he took home, she has like a southern accent.
Yeah. So the book, again, Cycle of the Werewolf, the first 4 or 5 months of that were these isolated stories of a werewolf attack in this town. This movie integrates, I feel like, a couple of those. The one with the lady who's about to commit suicide, who's pregnant, and I believe the guy who dies in the greenhouse, that hurts my parts guy.
Yeah.
Which
Who is impaled on his own
enjoys that.
floorboards.
Yeah, I actually don't know if he was one of the stories, but I think he probably was. Do you think these werewolf incidents are integrated well into the story, or do they kind of feel like shoddily crammed in there just to be there?
I would say that it's hard to look past that nostalgia, because when you look at it with my eyes now, it's like, oh yeah, naturally this would happen. But trying to take away that nostalgic lens, it does seem like it was like, here's the death, here's the other
Right.
death, here's the next one.
Yeah, I think the pregnant lady who's about to commit suicide upon this viewing seemed a little just shoved in there. Like, especially the exposition at the beginning where Marty overhears this guy breaking up with the lady at the beginning.
That was
that was
Stephen
that-
King.
Yeah. Oh, it was?
If you look at it,
I didn't actually look at it. But yeah, that scene just seemed kind of shoved in there.
It's your
just
oven,
for
but not my
whatever.
No, it definitely was. I can't say that it was shoved. It was shoved in there, but it was because it's like a Stan Lee moment.
Yeah.
You need to have one in there. It doesn't make sense for the story, maybe, but
I think
there it is.
This is, in my mind, there's this other element of the story going on, but it's really not the highlight. You're just focused on the novelty of the werewolf and that theme going on. But I think the interesting thing about that scene where it's revealed that she is pregnant and she's having this conversation with this guy is that you have this small town of Tarker's Mills where everyone's, happy. They all go to the same church. But underneath it all, there are other stories between different people where it's not so happy. It's there's a little drama going on behind everything, and that's what the werewolf kind of represents, is
I
this
agree.
hidden evil.
This movie.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that there's something about this werewolf figure that is a little bit more on the supernatural sense, because this werewolf happens to know all of the evils of all of the people in this town in a very intimate way, in such a way that it wouldn't be natural for him to know that.
Unless they're all confessing to him.
Well, but that would have to be a Catholic thing. So what I'm saying, they're not.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that he has to know these things somehow in a supernatural manner in order to target them in the way that he does.
So if we're going along with the Stephen King narrative, where if we look at his other work, he exclusively has this understanding of good versus evil. So you have to kind of approach the movie with that lens, where there's something more than just a monster. The monster always represents something more than that, and often it is kind of omnipotent, like it understands what's happening in the society or its civilization that it's inhabiting.
Otherwise, why would it target Brady, that little kid?
Right.
Why did it target Brady? I had a
Because here's why.
We're not there.
Yeah,
yet.
we're not.
Oh,
Yeah.
You can talk if you want. It's fine.
no, I didn't know where we were in this.
Yeah, we're about halfway.
But
I'm just-
back
go
to
ahead.
Reese's question about how these deaths are incorporated. I will agree. I think it's pretty quick. When you think about the storyline, it would make sense because you have this understanding as, Marty is talking to his girlfriend and everything, that the werewolf is almost kind of inhabiting this greenhouse, and that is in the neighborhood of the pregnant lady and the drunkard.
Makes sense.
So it would make sense. Those are nearby,
Yeah.
and so they would be the first to go. But it's not like
yeah.
you don't really hit those points.
Yeah, I wasn't taking a positive or negative stance on
Right.
it. I think it's important to have these killings that lead up
Yes.
to the final story, just
Right.
to or the final, confrontation. I was just asking if it seemed well implemented, which I think it's mixed. I think the greenhouse killing is really exceptionally done. All that setup works for me really well. I was just the pregnant lady killing was a little seemed just shoved in there. AJ, I want to ask you. This is something I kept asking everyone as we were watching this movie. Since we're all so familiar with this, except you and to a lesser extent David. We kind of brought him in on this train a few years back, but. Did you suspect the Reverend from the very beginning, or did you pick up on that later on? Because I can't remember the first time watching this movie, and if it was a surprise that it was him or not.
I knew this was going to be a topic, but so the instant that I did is looking forward in the plot a little bit was his dream.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't from the beginning.
Right.
But I guess it wasn't super late on.
All right.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying the movie was trying to keep it a secret throughout the whole thing, because they start to make it pretty obvious. But when I was watching this again for the episode, just seeing him in the opening scene, he just looks like a werewolf.
He does.
And you see him right after a brutal killing, and it's it's pretty obvious. Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's quickly talk about the death of Marty's friend Brady and the ensuing hunt for the werewolf out in the foggy forest.
This is where it gets really interesting for me with Brady's death and all.
Private justice.
Yeah. No, I thought it was really effective whenever the sheriff he after covering up the crime scene goes on and quotes the Bible and is essentially like what is going on, this needs to stop, etc.
His walking away from the gazebo with the kite.
Yes.
And I think the music there for me is particularly effective. There are moments where the music kind of ebbs and flows as far as
definitely ebbs and
whether
flows.
it really hits the mood or not.
There's a couple. Sorry to interrupt you. There's a couple
good.
really good themes in this movie.
Yes.
From the score, but then all the kind of anytime Marty is on his wheelchair zipping off somewhere, the cheesiest 80s music.
Yeah.
And it's almost like elevator music.
The only explanation I could give for that is maybe the composer was trying to get in the Marty headspace where you have this understanding that there's this great evil, but then when it's in his world, as a kid, you don't really think about the threat as strongly as you would as an adult. But,
Oh yeah, and that's made really
Yeah.
clear whenever he rides off into the woods.
Oh, yeah.
and-
The thing about the music that I really loved is there are actually two major themes. There's one that's very sinister, but
Yep. It's almost Jaws. It's Jaws.
Yeah, 2 notes.
yes, it's like, and so that's the werewolf.
There's
theme.
even a scene where it speeds up, where it's like dun dun dun.
exactly,
Like,
exactly,
it just
exactly.
and this movie is honestly very similar to Jaws
In some ways,
Oh,
yes, yes. You
And
know
then
when
there's-
something's happening.
Even at a point, David brought this up, that it has a psycho element
Yes.
when the...
Yes.
It literally plays
yeah,
the.
it's like,
a psycho.
Yes, I agree. And then there's a very sweet and tender and light, pure theme.
Saccharine.
Yes, which
Yeah.
is the relationship of maybe the sister and brother.
Yeah.
Or maybe Marty himself. So those are. It's like a very
Yeah.
contrasting two themes. I love those
Yeah.
two themes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we have our gang of people, heading out. Private Justice.
Private Justice.
Oh,
That was
yeah.
a good speech.
Genius.
Yeah, this was. I actually really like how Everett. Oh, what's his name? Locke's name.
Sheriff Joe.
Yeah, I like how the sheriff.
Holler. Or
in a
Holler.
His name is Joe.
H-A-L-L.
Yeah.
Holler.
Anyway.
In a normal movie, this would be like the speech, and it would end that way. Mm-hmm. You think you're getting ready to hear this sheriff talk, and that's going to be like the significant speech, and it's going to end.
Yeah.
But the way the tables are turned on him,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
and then a even more impactful speech is given from
yeah.
the
Brady's
victim's
dad.
father. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
My
like,
son was torn to pieces.
and this is something that 80s movies, only 80s movies can get away with. They're bigger than other movies. They go big.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for some reason, I'm able to give it a pass when
Yeah.
in a movie in the 90s, 2000s, it would just seem really cheesy.
Yeah.
I think it works here though, and
yeah.
you're like, yeah, they're
You go
gonna do some private justice right now.
You
Yeah.
go up to Harmony Hill
Militias.
and dig up what's left of my boy Brady and explain to him about private justice.
Gosh,
You want to
here's-
do that?
Yeah.
And
Here's
by
the
the,
thing,
way,
you're so
he says
on-
Harmony Hill. You remember
Yeah.
that?
Oh, yeah.
You know
Is
what
that
that's
a reference?
Yes.
Salem's
Lot.
Yeah.
Salem's
You're-
Lot has that graveyard, which is
Harmony Hill.
I did
Wow.
not know that.
There you
I'm
go.
thankful
Yeah.
for your memory of all that stuff.
But during this, you're totally on the sheriff's side, and you're like, yeah, they need to stop. And then you hear that the father, and he's like, oh
yeah,
man.
and you're put to shame the same way he
Yeah.
is. Like I love his acting here, where
I
he's just
know.
like he's looking down and he's like kind of just.
I love how
Yeah.
all the cops in this movie just bend over and take it
Yeah.
in every scene.
I think
Like,
that's my only one of my few concerns problems with this movie is that there's an element missing as far as the police investigation or the sheriff's investigation. I wish you could see like a little more of that
Yeah.
because what the audience ends up seeing is only his deputy hanging out in a bar.
Yes, I think this leaves it open to like this is one of those few movies where I would be open to a remake. This movie's close to my heart, but I want to see the Zodiac or True Detective version of
Right.
this
Yes,
movie,
that
where
would
it's
be
just
really
like
cool.
A procedural. They think it's a serial killer, and it turns out to be a werewolf.
Yeah. I would just want a little more time added into
Yeah.
the film
The-
so you can see their investigation process.
Yeah.
The forensic guy's like, these teeth marks really line up with a large wolf. I wonder what that's about.
No, the dog ate the head off, actually.
Well, clearly it is a man using a skull, scraping it across the body.
Sir, have you checked the autopsy report? I don't think it was a dog.
Anyway, the werewolf brutally kills a number of the members of this private justice committee, and
But not the annoying guy. The one who keeps getting in the sheriff's face.
no,
I wish you would take him out.
He's
sorry.
the Chad.
Yeah.
but yeah, this goes even further establishing that you do not want to mess with this werewolf. It is an imposing force. It can take out multiple people with ease. So that, I think, further kind of establishes this werewolf as like a scary force to reckon with, and something that that Marty's going to come face to face with, and you're like, how are they going to take care of this threat? With that said, though, let's move on with the story, Noah.
Sure thing. So, this is after the 4th of July is canceled. Now we pick up with Marty and Jane as they unfold the mystery behind these killings. Marty is attacked, but manages to injure the werewolf. They search for someone with an injured eye, and it is revealed to be none other than the good old Reverend Lowe. Priest by day, furry by night. Marty and Jane seek the help of their Uncle Red, who doubts their story at first, but eventually comes around. And together they go to Sheriff Joe, who is ultimately useless. They craft a silver bullet at the local weapons vendor, and at last slay a werewolf.
You know, you say he's useless, but he tried.
He tried. Do you know what his version of trying was? He went directly
to Harmony Hill, and he dug up that son Brady.
No, he went directly to where the culprit is at midnight alone, didn't tell anybody, and decided, you know what?
No backup.
I know there lots of people have died. There's probably a werewolf. They just told me some crazy story.
You know,
might as well just say hi.
I got
That's all right. The parents
Coffee.
left their kids in a town to go on vacation with mass murders going on.
Yeah.
With the drunk
okay,
uncle
he's a
that
threat.
they don't trust.
I think it's interesting, though, to watch a movie like this, and especially the fact that it's a small town. You think of it as like, why would they do this? This is such a dumb idea. But you've seen, especially with what COVID-19 has done, there are people that they don't want to abide to those regulations. They want to keep that sense of normalcy, especially when it's a close-knit group where everything is supposed to be happy and quaint. They want to maintain that. So like it kind of still fits in with what we see now.
It does. It's still useless, but it does fit in. And not to mention that you got to keep that same mindset in whenever you're kind of seeing the policemen twiddle their thumbs, not really doing the investigation. Because this is a small town. They're not used to having really any crime. They probably don't even know what to do. Yeah. And they're just trying to figure it out the best way they can. And maybe that's just going to the bar, getting drunk, and fighting the regulars.
We need a peacemaker there, though.
It was making me wonder, at what point do they bring in higher authorities?
That's what I was thinking.
I know they were talking about bringing in backup at some point, and that was delayed for some reason. But you've got a large amount of murders going on.
I think the idea that it's a small town, a small town world, you do not expect this kind of horror coming from a small town, common grouping of people. So you have these people that, they have their little pies and their cakes and their things and their little festivals and their little general small town things that they do. And then there's this horror lying embedded within their little small town gentle world.
Yeah.
There's got to be at least...
I do. Sorry.
Can I say something that I find interesting about this movie?
Sure.
This is something I picked up on. It's taken me 15, 20, however many times viewings to finally make sense of this. But I always was conflicted with Reverend Lowe, who he justifies killing these people based off the sins that they've committed, and he's trying to save their souls. What I didn't notice about this movie is that it is not your typical werewolf movie where the werewolf turns into a werewolf on just when it's a full moon. No, he can...
and then he forgets about what he experienced as a werewolf.
Right.
Yes. He changes into a werewolf whenever he wants. What I realized in this movie, though, is I think, and it doesn't spell it out, but I think he becomes the closer it is to a full moon, he becomes more of a werewolf.
Yes.
Right.
And
Wolfier.
loses control of who he is after and who he,
Exactly.
like, of his faculties. So it makes sense that this he thinks he's doing the best he can
Under
but
the
he-
circumstances.
yeah, but he just slowly starts to lose it, and I don't think he realizes he does.
Right.
And that's, I think that's a pretty, subtle way of, or interesting way of doing this.
Yeah, that's really
Where-
cool.
Yeah, so like by the end, he'll kill anybody, but he doesn't. I don't think his human form realizes that he's just
Right.
gone that completely off.
Right. It's kind of like instead of the human becoming a werewolf, it's like the werewolf starts to become a human kind of a thing, where
Yeah.
they're just kind of swapping places a little bit.
There's a little. The situation is this werewolf comes about as a result of certain things that are going on in the community. So he needs to. So he's almost existent because there are certain things that are foul in this community, even though it's a small, nice
Right.
little small town. But there are things hidden in people's souls or in their
Yeah.
bodies or whatever they're doing that is not right. And so
Yeah.
he says he can't help it. Several times in the film, he says he can't. He said, "I can't help it." He doesn't want to be that, but he ends up being a tool of a sort.
Yeah,
not
to
by
eradicate
his wishing to eradicate certain things that are going on in the community.
That's
So-
why it makes that scene so sad when he's trying to stop the
exactly
mob of people.
he doesn't
and he's
want
just
to
like,
be.
Please, you
he
don't
does
know
not
what you're
want to
doing."
be the, so to speak,
Yeah.
hand of God or
Right,
whatever you
right.
want to call it. He doesn't want to be that place, but he is for whatever reason.
Ironically,
Or
he doesn't
he
want to be
feels
the
like
hand
he
of
is.
God.
He feels
but
like
he's
he
a
is.
reverend.
Exactly. Whatever
I-
you want to interpret, however you want to interpret that.
I do think this is Stephen King kind of grappling with religion
yes,
in a way.
I agree.
Where it's
I agree.
I don't think he takes a stance one way or another
He's
or
not
the other,
sure.
but he does he's very uncertain.
I agree.
Yeah.
He's
I
like,
agree.
what if a righteous man has an affliction that forces him to sin?
Yeah.
Like it's like
Exactly.
that's the
To serve a purpose.
Yeah.
it's like how do you deal with that? What is the
And almost the horror of the situation is that they have no consistent form of government.
Exactly.
The cops are dopes,
Yep.
and they can't follow a lead.
They don't understand.
And then the parish that you go to is corrupted, essentially, because at its core, there's this guy that turns into a murderer, essentially.
And likes to chase
So-
children.
And you're in a small town
No one.
where you don't really have connections to the outer world. I think that's more the horror element here as you get older and start to realize that all of it kind of feels like a facade, and there's no structure.
yeah.
And there's this weird sense that he's almost like a demon. And the
Yeah,
reason
yeah.
I think he is because he seems to know the internal workings of people that would not normally
Right.
say what they were doing wrong, but he seems to know
Yeah.
that. And then he targets them and goes after them.
Well, I think
so
I
that's
think-
really strange.
I think that wraps back around to I think people confess to him like he knows
Yeah.
the whole
Yeah,
town.
yeah.
I think
I
that's how
guess.
he
I
knows
could
everything.
see that.
Like
could
I
see
see,
that.
I want to
And-
see the backstory to him. Like he's got his
Exactly.
logbook
How
of
does
here's
he
what this
know?
person's
So
done.
like,
How does he know
so like
all the people are wrong?
The
Yeah.
girl that is planning on committing suicide, perhaps she had told him in confidence, I've had suicidal thoughts, etc., etc. I don't know
Yeah,
what I'm
yeah.
going to do with the baby, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. And he was like,
I'll
I
see
know
you
how I can
tonight.
fix that.
But what about Brady?
I don't
He's
know.
too young to confess any
Well,
kind of
That's
thing
but
like
this
that.
is at the point where the werewolf has lost control. He's like he's
Yeah.
closer to the full moon. He's grasping at every little
Yeah.
straw to try and
then
justify what he's
Marty.
doing.
Yeah.
Brady
What
stayed
about
out
Marty?
late, and
Well,
Marty snuck
so-
out.
Marty snuck out, went all the way to who knows where on some bridge in the wilderness.
Yeah.
By the way,
and
the scariest
shooting fireworks into the air. He's kind of announcing his.
By the way,
location.
I think this is the scariest part of the movie.
Yes.
Like genuinely
Yeah.
terrifying
Yes.
to me. When I was a kid, I still find it scary. It's not as scary now, but
Right, right.
for me, I was like, this is you put a person in a incredibly
Oh,
vulnerable
yeah.
position.
Don't even give him a seatbelt or helmet.
Kudos to Corey Haim for that,
Yeah.
or Corey Haim for that he totally looks scary.
Yeah,
He
great
looks
job.
Yeah, they did
Great
it.
job.
I mean, he did a
really
good job
did a
with
good
that
job.
for sure.
Claps all around.
So
Yes.
go ahead, David.
So have you guys noticed that they don't really show the werewolf all that much in this movie? He's always either in the shadows or they're not really showing the full makeup.
Yeah.
And apparently there was a decision, and it went back and forth between Stephen King and the original art director or somebody, where they originally were trying to hire a dancer to play the werewolf, and they had this whole makeup idea, and then he was going to be this fast and like in your face, and you would see a lot more of him. Stephen King didn't want that.
I
And
wouldn't want
Stephen
that
got
either.
what he wanted.
I was actually
I was gonna
surprised how
say-
much we did see of it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's revealed pretty much right at the beginning, almost. Like in when he kills the pregnant lady, it's you see the werewolf.
But it's always in flashes, which
See-
I appreciate.
The design, I actually like the head of the werewolf. I think the body is a little too humanoid for me, though. It's just looks like it's a dude covered in hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it is.
Yep.
Stephen King wanted him to be in shadows. He did not want him to be revealed.
Yeah.
If you look at all his input in that,
Ima-
he did not want a lot of
Yeah.
visual for that.
Imagine what was his name from Neverending Story, Gamorg.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
the dog.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like that.
Imagine if they had done that for this. That would have been
That dog,
pretty
though,
cool.
is not a focus of that movie. It's
Right.
like
It's-
20
exactly.
seconds.
Okay, it's
of-
not, but like you can have the same effect.
True.
If their intent was to keep the wolf in, the fog and smoke and shadows, they'd hit a home run
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. They pretty
Yeah, I
much
agree.
did that.
I agree.
because
Yeah.
It was more
takes a-
effective.
bat out of the fog and
I
hammers
love
that guy.
He likes
Oh,
using
my
the
gosh,
bat
yeah.
a lot. He's like, I got these claws and these teeth, but
Well,
no, I
also-
like this bat.
Imagine those scenes at that date, 1985, and seeing that happen.
Exactly.
Like, I don't know about you, but for me, blunt force trauma is always worse for me than just slashing with a knife.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
watching
hate
someone
that.
who is still conscious with a
Yeah.
head injury is so
It's
disturbing.
disturbing.
So, like Walking
was
Dead, when they
very-
kill
it
that
was very
significant
startling.
character,
yeah, we won't ruin it. If
we
you
won't
haven't
ruin
seen
it. But that scene to me, the Negan bat, is just
Yeah.
like,
Dumbledore.
nope,
Oh,
nope,
yeah.
nope.
Yeah, it's something about, you're used to blunt objects just not really showing a thing, then you have a bruise later. But then
Yeah.
in movie's case, whenever the blunt object reaches a certain point that it's just,
Yeah.
mush, it's disturbing.
Yeah.
So
What,
that
AJ?
kind of leads to the question, though, if this is some kind of divine justice preventing or saving someone, why go
Yes.
through the
I
extra
agree.
gruesomeness of it and the brutality of it
Right.
instead of...
Yeah.
And
I
then,
think he-
on the flip side, once he is towards the end chasing Marty, he's doing so as a man consciously,
Yeah.
Yeah.
not as
Yes.
a monster.
Right.
I think it's a situation the Reverend cannot control, and when he is in werewolf form, he is doing things against his own will, and he is trying his very best to justify it.
Right.
I agree.
Once he becomes
so much.
conscious again.
It
Yes.
actually.
And
I agree.
It kind of could spin into that overall, I guess, divine intervention kind of
Right.
Yes.
speak, where in his waking dreams, his nightmare, he says, God, let it end.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
here, this is the
Exactly.
mechanism for which it ends for him.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, that's true.
It's
Yeah.
almost like a person who is possessed.
Yeah, it's like he's
it's like-
he's wanting the end, so he kind of like forces the hand so that he
Exactly.
ends up dying essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's get back to the main group here, Marty, Jane, and
Red.
Red. I do want to shout out again Gary Busey.
I love Gary Busey.
What I love about this character is he is flawed, but I love that he genuinely wants to be friends with Marty.
Yeah.
Like they have this relationship that is
Yeah.
unique, and he loves spending time with Marty. It gives you insight into, like, yes, he is a broken person, but you can empathize with him, and he clearly loves Marty, and
Oh, yeah.
despite his flaws, I think
Yeah.
their bond and the final bond that all three of them have towards the end really goes a long way
Yeah.
to selling this movie. And
Yeah.
every scene Gary Busey is in, especially the dinner scene before the parents are sent off, like that whole scene, Gary Busey, it's almost transcendent acting in just how like that's a dinner, and Gary Busey
real.
is acting exactly like that uncle that you know. Just so y'all know, full transparency, we have an uncle that very much reminds us of this character.
They have the same energy.
He loves being compared to Gary Busey.
No, he doesn't.
No, he actually doesn't, but he is very much like him.
Yeah, they have the same energy, and it really revealed to me that this is a genuinely good performance.
Right.
I think it's above anyone else in the movie.
Yeah.
Like when I think of Silver Bullet, I first think of Gary Busey.
Oh yeah.
Which is not a lot of people probably say that, but that's
Also, one of my favorite scenes as I've become older is actually his conversation with his sister once Marty goes up the stairs. And seeing the complete
dynamic
change of his expression once Marty is out of view, where
he's
his
like still
face,
giving him the thumbs up, like
and then his face just falls, and then he takes a swig, and then the whole conversation that ensues, like that is a very good dramatic moment.
Irina made me shut up when I was talking during it.
Because I want to I don't know why, but like little vignettes like that of conversation are just I don't know why I enjoy them so much, because they just do it so well.
Yeah,
because there are subtleties in personalities and in interactions of people.
Also learning that like you when you can feel for all characters involved, that is a sign of good writing and good acting, because you understand the mother's perspective.
I want to say something about that, just briefly.
Yeah, go ahead.
The sister, she comes across really annoying, and everybody hates her. But if you listen to what she's saying, you recognize that the things that she is saying is as a result of having to deal with people who are causing her children some strife.
Right.
And she's trying to protect them.
Right.
And so her demonstrations of, I don't know, angst, if you will, are as a result of that. And you can feel for her because of that. But she is annoying the way she projects
the
herself.
mother.
So
the dad
that's all
doesn't
I'm
do
saying.
anything.
Right.
Yeah.
And the dad is basically a nothing character in this. He's kind of like
He's
whatever.
always
going
in
with
his
the flow.
room.
But the point is
understand.
like I love the mom because she's basically a lioness protecting her cub, and then the uncle he sees that like you're only taking care of him from a perspective of like highlighting his I guess his crippled
Disability.
his disability.
She's
Yeah.
overprotective.
And so he's like, he needs
I
to,
agree.
you need to approach him as a person. And that's what the uncle is able to do.
Yeah, so it's like that that thing where you keep telling someone is this way, they'll start to think, yeah, I am this way. But
Right.
the uncle, on the other hand, is like, no, Marty is great.
Yeah.
He doesn't need his legs.
He's
essentially.
more
Don't tell
than
him what he
his
can't do.
Exactly.
But at
You're
the
right.
same time, she raises some good points about his character and how he's kind of given up. He's going through a divorce.
Right.
He's an alcoholic a little bit.
A little bit.
But it was really nice for them to touch on this later once they're
Right.
at the funeral, and he's stressed out over the alcohol. Or sorry, he's stressed out, and he pulls out his flask, and then he like does a side glance to Marty, and puts it away. It's like, aw.
So
he
this is-
actually took that and that argument to heart and put it away.
This is what I love about movies like this. They don't harp too much on the drama. They have just the right amount where you can enjoy it and learn valuable lessons, but then they move on. There are some dramatic films where I'm like, okay, you're like overkilling it. You're really working for that Oscar. Like, calm down. That's not real life,
Basically the lady from Hereditary.
Right. But this
Your favorite movie.
Overacting.
drama-wise, I think this movie has a very good balance, and all the actors worked really well together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
I was just gonna. Do you have final words to say? I was gonna move on.
I was just gonna remark again on how well set up the town is and the townspeople. They really sell that vibe of everyone knows each other. and you hear little snippets of conversation somewhere like you would, and it doesn't really connect to anything, but it paints the background picture of
And
what
that's
the town's
a
like.
that's a Stephen King thing.
That is
Yeah.
a Stephen King.
But, yeah.
thing, Yes.
All right. So let's talk about one of, in my opinion, the best sequences in this movie where I felt the most tension. And that is Jane finally kind of submitting or believing her brother and going off to find this guy who might not have an eye.
Yeah.
This is such a brilliantly executed sequence. The score is actually very good throughout this point, and I love how the camera focuses on all of these townspeople's faces, the ones that you've kind of seen little brief snippets of, and the camera holds on them for longer than you're used to, and the score is playing throughout this, and I don't know, it's just this kind of almost trippy, sequence where you're
Right.
kind of concerned, but you're also like, oh, this is like an examination of the town that we've kind of already gotten to know, but under a different lens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when it finally comes to the pastor, and you see her, bring the cans towards his place, and you see him gardening or whatever, and it pans over to his eye, and one is
Yeah.
blacked out. It is it's so good. And then the scene in the garage is just
Oh gosh.
so
yeah.
good. Like this is back ended, or this is connected to two very tense sequences, one between Jane and one Marty, where Marty's kind of being tracked down by the Reverend in his car. Obviously, he's almost completely lost at this point because Marty sent him that letter. Why don't you just kill yourself?
Yeah, that'll work.
Yep.
He did it in
every day.
He did it in the serial killer style where he's cut out all these different letters to
Yep.
to do whatever.
Glued them onto
but
a
obviously
paper.
that didn't work.
I just love how he's like. I love how he's all like, I think I know what to do, and then it's just a letter. It's like, why don't you kill yourself?
Marty, no.
That's so appropriate for a kid to say
Oh, yeah.
something like
Yeah,
that. They just
definitely.
wanna,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
end the
Exactly.
whole
That's
thing.
like that. That's what kind
Yeah.
of redeems it in a way.
Why
And-
don't
and-
you kill yourself?
And it's kind of
Please give
proof
up.
that
Let me win.
it's kind of proof that he's conscious in his werewolf form to an extent, because whenever he's chased down Marty and he's trying to kill him, he talks about how killing oneself is the greatest sin that one can commit. And he's talking
yeah.
specifically to Marty about that.
Yeah.
So
It's funny that he is able to justify continuing his existence while ending others.
Yeah,
I
at
know.
this
Exactly.
point.
well, yeah, he directly follows that by saying it is God's will that I
Yeah.
kill people so that they won't fall into these traps or whatever, temptations or
Imagine
sin.
a minister or somebody in the head of a church of some sort being cursed with this thing, and how they would deal with that. They couldn't interpret it any other way that, okay, maybe I am God's justice.
Yeah.
So how
I am
else
the
would
sword.
they interpret that if they were cursed with something like
See,
that?
for me, I would not interpret it that way unless I had something wrong in the head. I would interpret it
Being a
as
child predator.
I actually put that in my notes. He's saying, "Why don't you come inside and have a
cold
drink?
Have some soda.
I got some soda. Why don't you
get into
take a
my car."
nap?"
Yeah.
You know,
And actually, that part is what gives me chills today. Like as a kid, it's all the werewolf stuff. But now looking at that, because it's so believable, and in that situation where Jane's back is towards the
I know.
the cans and the bat and everything, and he knows she saw the bat.
oh yeah.
And this is
And just-
juxtaposed with going through the town, and all these guys are giving her
right.
side eyes. But
Right.
she's like comfortable in that, I guess. But the supposedly nice, friendly guy is the most tense.
Yeah. And the stare down that they have, and I think this dramatic lighting was very effective,
Yes.
where it's like covering half her
Exactly.
face and all you see are her eyes,
Exactly.
like just
And
And
staring
they
back.
won't believe her. She's a kid.
Yeah.
And who drinks all that new Coke?
I love the way that they had her acting in this moment too,
She
because
was
it's
good.
it's
She was
complete
very
terror
good.
for a minute.
Yeah.
But she
Smart.
manages to keep it together enough to just say, I need to go.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm not feeling so well.
Yeah.
And I
Can
think
you
that
imagine what you would do in that position?
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's actually a pretty natural way that someone might act in that case. Someone who at least has half a brain.
Right.
They wouldn't completely sell that it's not suspicious, but they'd make an excuse to get out.
Yeah.
So I really liked that.
Yeah. And that I love that scene where, and we're watching it now, but where
Oh gosh, yes.
where
Oh my god.
Marty is kind of stuck on the bridge, and
Yeah.
the pastor kind of just walks slowly towards this abandoned bridge, kneels or bends over, looks under, and he's got his full-on eye patch going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he just sinisterly walks towards him.
I think
It's so good.
the scariest part about that is him being just in the bridge and just waiting to see the car come around the corner. I think that part gives me the most, anticipation.
What
But then,
suspense.
yeah,
Oh my
That-
goodness.
That scene too. So he started off, being clean shaven.
Yes,
This scene,
exactly.
he's got stubble, 5 o'clock
Exactly.
shadow, so
Yep.
he's
You're
merging
right.
with the wolf
Yes.
form.
oh yeah,
More hair.
Yeah.
Very good.
Oh, yeah.
Very good.
He's losing it.
And even in this scene, there's a really cool transition where at first he's as he's walking over, he's almost diplomatic in what he's
Exactly.
saying,
Right.
And as he gets closer, he like curses him. And,
Yeah.
You little blank.
yeah, exactly.
also, like, it's
and
a-
gets more and more aggressive.
You know what's
Yes.
interesting? There's like, as we talk about it, there's so much more visual,
Yes.
effects
Storytelling.
or storytelling
Yeah.
than I
Exactly.
realized.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
as he's approaching the bridge, it's like only once he's in the shadows, under the bridge, that's when he starts like
Exactly,
turning
revealing.
a little
Yeah.
bit.
Revealing.
And so it's like outside of that, he's all calm, he's all pleasantries, and then once
Yeah.
he's in the bridge, he's all like, "You little shit,"
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
I love that transition. Wow,
Yeah.
I didn't even
Like
really
his
think
real
about it
self
that
Yep.
way.
comes out.
It's great.
What's crazy is what I love about this too is you are not certain which side of the pastor this is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Where it's like,
Exactly.
does he kind of relish this right now?
Yeah,
is he
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of enjoying this?
Yeah.
Like, is it he's kind of giving in to the beast and he
Oh,
almost kind of wants
He
to?
is
Yeah.
complex.
Yeah.
He is complex.
Yeah, you don't really think about it watching this upon a first viewing, but then as you think about it, you're like, oh yeah, okay, his character is a lot more complex, and actually, I feel
Exactly.
really, really bad for him.
Exactly. He does have a sense of morality. It's a
But he's trying to make it work.
maybe a twisted one.
Yeah.
And it's his version.
Right.
His particular version of morality.
This is my truth.
yes.
All right, let's
Oh, go ahead.
all right, let's talk about the kind of final moments of this movie, or the final sequence, I guess. Last act.
Yeah.
Marty and Jane are finally able to partially convince Red to he kind of starts to finally buy into what they're saying. He sees there's suspicious things that are happening, and he does start to suspect the Reverend, even though he doesn't quite believe that it is a werewolf. He does suspect that the Reverend is up to something weird. He talks to the sheriff. Sheriff dies, obviously. We talked about that scene already.
What a dummy.
But this leads to the final scene where Red takes the cross and the pendant from Marty and Jane and fuses them into a silver bullet from this guy who's supposedly like a wizard at what he does. And he crafts a silver bullet. There's this really well done line where the what's the name for what's that profession?
He's a gunsmith.
Where the gunsmith, they have this exchange where, we're just, they wanted to, he wanted to, I forget what they
Lone
wanted.
Ranger. It's
Yeah,
like
he's in the Lone,
yeah.
he's in the Lone Ranger now, and he's like, yeah, we're crafting this thing, and it's a silver bullet, whatever. And the
Like, what do you think I'd shoot this with? And he's like, well,
yeah, how about a werewolf?
how about a werewolf?
And
know that-
Go ahead.
Go ahead. That whole exchange Gary Busey had this understanding with Stephen King that he could ad-lib this whole zone.
And
I
he
know you
pulled.
were probably
that's
going to say
cool.
it, and so that was ad-libbed.
Yeah, and you.
So
It's so Gary Busey again, so natural in his reaction to that, where it's just like this uncomfortable, like, oh, okay. You would kind of understand me, and
Yeah.
I don't like that you understand me.
Yeah.
It confirms that
It's
this
like
is real.
It's such
love that.
it's such a human reaction to want to not believe something that makes you uncomfortable,
Okay.
you know? And then once things start lining up around you, you're all like, well, great.
okay, we understand each other, and this is actually real. And did you hear Gary Busey's throat swallow?
No, it's like if you turn up the volume a little bit, you can hear
it's
this loud swallow.
He said, it's my kids. It's a gag gift, This is for the Lone Ranger and everything like that, like kids would do.
Yep.
He said, what else would you use it for? That was ad-libbed. And then he said, how about a werewolf? And he goes, look.
Like
throat swallow.
I'll say
I love that.
the delivery of the gunsmith isn't perfect, but
No.
Gary Busey's reaction is perfect.
like great.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
So as far as the making of the
love
bullet goes, did anyone else find it very satisfying?
Oh yeah,
watching?
Yes.
every time I watched this movie, I loved that part because I was like, oh, I love the sounds and
know.
just watching him make.
Think
this,
Lord of the Rings when
I
they're
know.
forging the rings in the beginning.
Nice.
That's what I was
Exactly.
thinking of.
Exactly.
And the music's on point
music
at this
is
point
like-
too.
Yeah,
The music is like old world nostalgic.
Yeah.
It's
Also-
like there's some vibe that it's hard to reproduce that.
Yeah.
Also, one thing that I kind of enjoyed is with the making of the bullet, they said it was made from a crucifix and what
Like a pendant.
and
A pendant?
A medallion.
Yeah. So the
medallion.
medallion.
Yeah.
It wasn't really a
I-
crucifix, but
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to think that they chose that.
Chose.
So maybe
find
is
it.
it the silver or is it the crucifix kind of?
Both.
Oh, interesting.
know?
Yeah, that's
It's
an
both.
interesting point.
Like,
It's both.
but
well,
because
that's where the
this
silver
is very
from the
close.
legend originally comes from, I think. is-
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there you
Silver,
go.
actually, in medical terms, they used that in old, in ancient times to purify things.
So
if you wanted to actually cleanse something, you would use actual real silver to cleanse that.
So this was actually, I looked this up. It was a, quote, subtle reference to the story of the Beast of Gévaudan, probably the most
Gévaudan.
famous... Gévaudan. There you go.
I looked this up too.
Yeah, which is probably the most famous werewolf story in history and the origin of the silver bullet myth. So that's where that's from. Do you know more about that, Mom? If you,
Yes, I do.
Go ahead
a
and
little
go.
bit.
Let me know. I'm
Just
curious.
at the origin of the story, this beast was only able to be succumbed by people putting together their crucifix out of pure silver. So they made it into something that could actually pierce
Oh, that's
the
interesting.
beast and kill it.
Awesome.
Nice.
So that is kind of what I was saying then.
Yeah, you were on the right track. You had
There
good
you go.
instincts.
Oh, and
You're correct.
by the way, there's also a line that confirms my thought about the pastor becoming more werewolfy during the full moon. Marty himself says or suggests that as the moon gets fuller, the guy gets wolfier.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
the line, and I'm like, yes, that is it. That's what's
That's
happening.
exactly what
In
I-
layman's
what I
terms,
was
yes.
thinking.
Yeah, so they do kind of lay it out for you.
And that's
But
actually recognized by medical professionals that when the full moon comes, people get weird.
People get weird.
They just do.
I mean, that was the Gary Busey line, the red, when he says that.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
does.
Brings out
That's
the
right.
psychos.
Yeah. So let's talk about the final all-night vigil of sorts, where I love the scene where it kind of like cuts to them. They've all fallen asleep, and the final the programming is coming to an end, and the final like whatever.
Countdown.
Yes, exactly. And they're all just asleep around in the living room.
So
And-
actually, that's something that like they don't do that anymore. But Mom, wasn't it correct that they would play the national anthem at the end of
Yes.
this television
Broadcast.
In
program?
fact,
yeah.
there was a time point in which if you were watching TV at a certain point, it would actually cut off and then the national anthem would play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yes,
Times have changed.
That's actual.
You only have
Yeah,
three
the three
TV
original
stations,
channels.
Too. Yeah, dang it, you're on
That,
the
that
same
actually
track as
harkens
The one
back from
thing-
radio too. It was the same thing.
Yep.
That's true. The one thing I wanted to note about Gary Busey's character, he had such great character and courage. He also believed the children. There's something that has always bothered me about a lot of horror stories in which the parents would say to the kids, "Oh, you're just fine. Let's put you back in your room, close your door, put you in the black, and just let you go to sleep. What you said means nothing." I hate that because I think children are more sensitive to certain things than maybe adults are. And so what I liked was that Gary Busey's character, Red, was responsive and sensitive to the kids, and that he kind of held out a certain opening for the possibility that they might be correct.
So
And
here's
I loved that so much about this film. That's why I really love this film, because he was there as their protector, because he was the only adult who would stand up for them.
Here's what I liked about that. I constantly think about the aftermath of this movie, because obviously the werewolf turns back into a human, and you imagine the sequel to this being like, oh, they killed the Reverend.
Yeah.
Because he just like looks like that. The limb that Red stood on, he sent the parents off to this thing that he didn't have tickets to. That is an incredible leap of faith for these kids.
It was.
Yeah.
He was.
Like he
was
knows
such a beautiful hero.
he knows that his credibility is completely done after this, and it is, and even if they're successful, he knows it. Like it's the ultimate like sacrificial move for the kids, because he loves them, and I'm
He's
like,
a beautiful character.
that was so good to me. Like,
And the hard part about it is, even afterwards, they have no way of proving that there's a werewolf.
Exactly.
All they know is that this is a man that attacked them, but they can't ever say, like, well, we were expecting a werewolf.
the only thing that could potentially help them is seeing the sheriff's dead body at the Reverend's place.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's the only thing. If he didn't dispose of it properly.
By the way, a little trivia about that. You know, when he was scared when the werewolf came through the wall? That was a real reaction, because he had not rehearsed that.
Yeah.
They
Oh.
surprised
He didn't
him
know
on
where
that.
it was coming from.
They surprised him
He's
on
like,
that.
I'll just ad-lib everything.
Exactly.
And they're
No.
like, all right.
Oh no, they broke through the wall. He did not know that was happening. And
That's
so
great.
the reaction, if you watch the movie, he is like real. It's like, what?
He
Whoa.
eliminated his pants.
But
Oh my gosh.
exactly. So
I was
when you
wondering
see
when that line would come up.
Anyway, so the thing about it is, what I loved about his character is that, okay, he saw the werewolf. He could have been like totally yellow-bellied or something and run away.
Right.
And instead, he saw he had his little niece and nephew there.
And he
took
dropped
something
the bullet.
and he tried to like whack them like he was fighting a werewolf, which was like bigger than him, stronger than him, but he still fought.
Dude, I remember.
I loved that. I loved that. He was courageous, totally.
This vigil that they have, like, I think even now, like, if I were to watch this, I would feel like that trepidation, because there's that moment where, like, she sees it in the window and she screams. Nobody else does. But then there's that sound that Red hears, and he's staring down the hallway, and there's like a mirror there, and you're just like, what is it? You know? And
by the way,
just
she had
out
a
of the
great
wall.
scream.
Oh yeah,
I mean, golly, that was a great scream.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, also I love Red's delivery of like, all right, don't panic. You know, kind of a thing where it's like he is panicking, but he's trying to like
He's trying to keep calm,
keep level.
Because like if they start panicking, he will panic.
Yep.
Yes.
And I know that feeling.
I know it's perfect.
Oh,
it's like
we're watching in the background, and I just made another kind of realization. So they all go to sleep to the anthem, you know.
Yes.
And
then you wake up because
by some providence, right when the werewolf gets there, his cigarette has just reached the link to burn him and wake everyone up.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So I think that in this movie, there's nothing that is without symbolism.
yes.
Yeah.
That's
or
her strength.
meaning.
or
Yeah.
meaning. And that like was definitely a point to
Yes.
like, hey,
Yeah.
something's nudging you here.
Well, the thing is, he doesn't want to go into childhood fantasy, but
Yeah.
at the same time, he doesn't want to disbelieve what's truth. So that's why I love him, because he's
Smoking
trying to
is
get at
good.
the-
Yeah, smoking is good. Scare away the werewolves.
Well, what I'm
Some
saying
old
is
school cigarette propaganda.
he's trying to make sure that he doesn't err on one side or the other, and that's why I really love Red's character.
Yeah.
He's trying to
Yeah.
believe them when it's true, not when it's a childhood fantasy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he doesn't want to be led into a weird like fantasy zone where
Yeah.
it's like
Right, right.
totally off
Let's
reality. So-
just say it is
He
an
wants to do
absolutely
the right thing.
bonkers idea.
yeah. So I love him because he's trying to do the right thing as best as he knows how.
He's just crazy enough to do it.
And that's the thing. He believes what is truth, even though it's through children.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, he doesn't believe the werewolf, but he does expect that something is up, and he is protecting them.
Look.
So
And the reaction to the actual breakthrough of the wall with a werewolf is an actual real
Yeah,
reaction.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's quickly talk about this final kind of battle between the three and the werewolf. Yeah, it kind of doesn't disappoint. It's over pretty quickly, which I'm actually happy about.
I agree.
Otherwise, I would not believe this sequence because this werewolf would rip these people in half.
It's true. It's true.
he already
Like-
seemed to be pulling his punches a little bit.
Yeah, they kind of get they're pretty safe on this one. There's a couple of times where the werewolf could have definitely like slashed their
Oh, yeah,
faces.
he decides to
Yeah.
knock the weapon out of his hands without
Yeah.
using the claws,
Well, he
and then
grabs-
he throws him.
And he grabs Jane too. His face, his hands are literally on her face.
Right, right.
Like where in other sequences we had seen,
Like,
just
they
him
would be dead
completely
already.
slashed.
Exactly.
But you know, it's a movie.
But you could make the argument that he is now almost a 50-50 blend between him,
Yeah.
the Reverend, and him. So half of this is a bit of malice and human reaction
Exactly.
instead of it being the full animalistic scratch and
So it's
Right.
Professor
Yeah.
Hulk.
yeah.
But yeah, they finally shoot it in the eye, and it's pretty much game over there. I love the effects of the werewolf transforming back into human. The
oh,
Yeah,
I
that's
love
good.
that.
the retracting of the
That's
hair
really
back into
cool.
the body. It's slowly turning
And
into
the music.
the
Theoden.
pastor.
Yes.
All I could think though is like, what are the repercussions of this? It looks like there is a dead pastor in their house.
Yeah, well, to be fair, I think they're completely fine. I don't think they'll have any repercussions.
Yeah,
just
but-
because of the fact that it is their house.
What? Here's what I mean.
The
Though.
wall is broken.
Why
here's
is
what I
this
mean, though.
naked pastor in our house.
What were you saying, Reese?
I don't think anyone will ever believe that it was a werewolf. Is
Right.
What I'm
Oh
saying.
yeah, definitely.
it
The
just
guy
looks
that
like-
witnessed it in the fog. But
Yeah.
didn't say anything to anybody
But
else.
why is the pastor in our house and he's naked?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
sorry,
Sure.
that's a point. You
We're
know?
into some weird stuff.
He's a furry.
So I don't know if this was for a jump scare just at the last minute, but I thought it was interesting
yeah.
that the wolf itself had a death and then the man had a separate death.
Yeah.
Yeah, he kind of has a
You know,
last like
that's a very good point.
last final jump
That's a
out
very
at the
good point.
people. Yeah,
I agree.
I feel like it was giving an equal time to both sides of that.
I think it is a bit of both. It's a startle, and it also is the effect of the man dying.
Yeah. All right. So this is the end of the story portion of this podcast. Do we have any final words on the story here? How it all wraps up? Because it's pretty much.
So how did you guys feel about the retrospective narration part of it? Because I was on board with it in the beginning from
Right.
Jane. You know, she's telling the story about her childhood, and then it's all about Marty in the middle, and then at the end, Jane is just, you know, completes her narration.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it kind
thought
of-
that was a little forced in. I
Yeah,
almost
that's
forgot
not
she
one
was
of my
there at all.
favorite things, is
Right,
because
right.
it was inconsistent in my opinion.
I almost got the sense that from that narration that Marty had passed on.
Yeah,
Or like
I
it
did
was
too.
like
That's,
what is
Isn't
the
that weird?
implication here? Like you get the sense that she's older,
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
but this is like worlds away from her life now, and she's just like kind of recalling it.
Right.
I definitely want to know like what.
It is interesting how I think with the narration, like that is kind of the impression I got at the end, because it seemed almost like you expected a in memoriam, so and so. But I do feel like you are so swept up in the action that once the narration comes back in, you kind of realize, oh yeah, this was narrated by her. But by this point, I felt like it was mostly Marty's story.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But maybe, I don't know. I can see how that would be inconsistent. What was the other movie we covered where there was narration that felt disjointed?
It was Hateful Eight.
Yes, Hateful Eight.
Right, because it was
kind
Quentin
of like
Tarantino. Yeah.
This one I think is a little smoother because it's not just kind of thrown in right in the middle. But yeah, there is that moment where you get sucked in and then the narration sort of pulls you out again, and I think it's almost like it's trying to put the focus back into the family relationship. Like it's focusing on them again and how...
Except for the dad.
Yeah, except for the dad. The dad's just like, no, make sure you eat your meat and vegetables.
Don't forget Marty.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's basically the extent of him. But
Listen to your mother.
Don't make me turn this car around.
Yep.
In a strange horror way, it was a brother and sister story.
Yeah. It's and I think it was almost like it was trying to circle you back into that. But I think the reason it's so abrupt is because it literally is abrupt. They just wrap up the story right there, and that's it. So you're kind of taken off guard for a moment where, okay.
Yeah,
that's the end.
You're expecting that scene that's in the future.
Right.
Where she's like reflecting. She's wearing black now.
Yeah.
And
I get
talking to her grandkids.
No, I just imagine her standing in front of the grave and just like, it's like, Marty would have appreciated this.
Yeah.
I get the feeling that in the beginning there was this relationship of misunderstanding between brother and sister. But when all of these situations happened between, a werewolf and whatever else, the bottom line was they love each other and they will be together for each other and they will support each other and they understand each other.
Yeah, I like that too.
All right, that's it. That is a good note to end this story portion on. We're going to take a quick break, and on the other end, we're going to get into our brief reviews of the film with numbered scores, along with what critics thought. We'll get into some box office, and we'll wrap it up with this movie as a franchise, which it is not, but there was some talk about sequels for this one, perhaps remakes. So we'll see y'all then. Goodbye. Welcome back. Are y'all ready to talk about Silver Bullet?
Yes,
All right.
I used to be a werewolf like you until I took a bottle rocket to the eye.
All right. Brief reviews. David, you have our scores there in a little bowl. You want to pull them at random?
I think I can manage. Let's see who we got here first. We've got a race with a 7.5.
What's that voice?
It's Australian, but it's honestly insulting.
It's like a goofy
Australian David
version of Australian.
It's the average Maine accent by this cross section of the citizenry there. They're all pretty crabby up there, so.
All right. As much as I love this movie, I had to try my best to extract all the nostalgia that I have for it. That said, I think I might raise it to an 8. This is one of the few times where I might lift my score. I think 7.5, even with nostalgia factored in, is a little harsh. I think this movie definitely holds up. There's so many things that I like about it. I like the relationship between Jane and Marty. I like the relationship between Marty and Red, and I like it when they all get together and they have this group at the end. It's so believable, and I'm rooting for them the entire time. There's such great chemistry between these main three actors, and just I like a good werewolf story, and I like the moral questions that this movie asks about a reverend portraying a werewolf and kind of what that means, and it poses some difficult questions, especially for a movie of this type where you don't normally expect it. I think Stephen King's writing shines through. His script for this is better than the original material. I think this is a solid adaptation of Cycle of the Werewolf, one of the few movies that is better than its source material. It's not perfect. There's definitely some cheesy moments. There's moments that don't hold up. The music is hit or miss, even though the main themes still are, successful. But yeah, I think this movie pushes past my nostalgia for it and is still good. Like I can stand by that. It is Silver Bullet is an underrated Stephen King adaptation. I confirm that. That's all. I
Confirm that.
I agree.
So yeah, 8 out of 10 for Silver Bullet.
All right, invalidating your 8.0, we have Noah with a tightening 8.0.
Tightening?
I did not say tightening. What you see there is frightening.
Oh, okay, I see where I
Tightening
messed up.
8.0.
Yeah, a frightening 8.0. I really like this movie. It immediately sells you on the mood of the entire town, and there's just loads of symbolism, and it has just a nice, nuanced, small-scale story. It's not like this huge thriller that you're expecting a jump scare every moment. It's not a high quality production. It's all about the concept. And I enjoy all the characters, specifically Uncle Red. And there's not much else to say about it. I mean, it's just great. 8.0.
All right, we have 2 8s. Moving on to AJ with a 6.5.
All right.
All right. So I guess a little precursor here. I watched this movie for the first time a handful of hours ago, so it hasn't fully digested, and I haven't seen it hundreds of times like some of us here. So
Before you go into
no
it,
nostalgia there.
Before you go into it, I am in complete. I completely understand why other people would
agree.
not be as receptive to
Totally
this film
understand.
as other people. We grew up on it, so go ahead.
So that said, and also I am not really a horror movie person. I don't. I mean, I don't hate them or dislike them for the most part.
Sure.
I just don't usually choose to watch them. And I know there's a distinction between horror and thriller, so I usually tend towards the thriller type versus the horror. But that's a discussion for another time.
Sure.
Let's see, what was I saying? So that said, I haven't really, talking about this movie has helped me, and I enjoyed the movie for a horror movie, and I thought a lot of the production value with werewolves, it can really go wrong in a lot, especially old movies. This one, I didn't really have any problems from a visual perspective. I enjoyed the music. I thought that was great. And as has been said, I really picked up on the small town vibe of it that really spoke to me early on. And so I really appreciated that. So I guess, and I've been between 6.5 and 7, most of this episode.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to talk this out and I'll see where I land.
Sounds good.
Still trying to figure it out.
All right.
I guess where I wanted more in this movie was the brother-sister aspect of it, and for it to be smoothed over a little bit more. I think if they stuck with a focus from Jane's perspective and stuck with a retrospective narrative flow, that would have helped. Because I thought Jane's, acting was one of the highlights, of course, with Gary Busey as Red. I didn't click so much with Marty. I think it would kind of some of the name of the movie Silver Bullet, the whole kind of modified wheelchair thing got a little bit too Flight of the Navigator for me, or too much focus on that,
Aspect.
So it lost a little bit of the focus there,
Right.
where if it really focused on the relationship through and through, and them coming together to fight this monster, that would have helped. And with that small town feel, that kind of conflicted with, I guess, the naivete of like everybody else, just like this mass gruesome murder going on. Everybody's got their head in the sand, but everyone's also up in arms about finding things. So that's a problem in general with the horror genre that I have personally, why I don't gravitate for it, because a lot of these kind of movies I am not as capable as suspending disbelief for.
Right.
And so that's where my analytical side kind of goes into overdrive and picks apart. That's dumb. Like, why would they do this? Like, that car is from the 80s. This is supposed to be in the 70s. All that stuff. So that's where I land a little bit. From a heart emotional feel of this movie, kind of just enjoying it, I did enjoy it. And so it was successful in that, right? And, I think it's high praise to say I would choose to watch this movie again being a horror movie. And that's not something of most movies that I would watch again. So I'm comfortable with the 6.5. It's
All right.
mostly
That's amazing.
positive. It still doesn't hold up to the analytical side of me trying to pick things apart. And that's not this movie. That's just the horror genre in general.
Right.
Sure.
All right, fair enough.
All right, next up, Irina with an 8.5.
A lot of this is nostalgia, but I think this, I've already, through talking about this film, I think you can tell all the things I love and appreciate about it. So I'm going to talk about the things that I've found were lacking after watching it more critically. And I think a lot of the cutting and just sort of the flow of the film can be jarring at times, where you're kind of jumping to one event and then you're in a bar scene, and you don't see a lot of that footwork done between the murder and investigation. I feel like that is the one thing that is really missing and being portrayed in this film, is like what is happening as far as the sheriff's progress in this case. You kind of like, the only times you see him, he's either kind of like reclined in his chair in his office on the phone, or his deputies in the bar. I would love to see a little more added in that regard, as well as I think the transition from Jane being frustrated with her brother and suddenly believing her brother is a little sudden. I think this movie overall is just a bit short. Like, there are necessary scenes that are kind of cut out. I love the music, but sometimes it doesn't quite fit what is happening. And overall, after learning that the director has done a lot of TV shows, it makes a lot of sense, because this does come across as more of a TV show telling of a story, where it's this short story expanded into a film.
I could totally see this being it is in a similar vein as the It and Salem's Lot
Right.
type.
Or Stand By Me.
Those were actually
Miniseries, yeah.
Like, I could see Silver Bullet fitting
Right.
right in with those.
And I think that's the issue with it, where it doesn't feel like a fully fleshed out film beginning to end. It's almost the director was presenting this narrative in the medium he knew how. And for him to do that, he did a very good job. And it's a complete story. But I do see that aspect kind of affecting the work. As well as the fact that they changed cinematographers. Is that correct?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's
So
like
they-
two different ones.
There is sort of this clash as far as visual narrative, where you see kind of two different film styles going on. And I didn't notice that as a kid. I just kind of accepted everything. But as I grew older and looked at it more analytically, you can kind of see how it switches from that kind of trying to be this next horror film where, you know, there are surprises, jump scares, trying to be the next just novel thing, but also trying to balance that Stephen King narrative where it's combining the two. So I think it needed just a little more time, a little more screen time in certain areas, and then it could be a little more rounded. But ultimately, I love this movie, and it'll still be a classic for me every Halloween.
Awesome. Me too.
If I may put an addendum, what Irina said jarred a memory from what I wanted to expand upon is,
Sure.
I completely agree, is if you put this as a procedural kind of detective side, that might, you know, in my opinion, put it more towards a thriller where you have people mysteriously disappearing instead of literally, you know, a large amount of townspeople seeing the gruesomeness of this, and even actual witnesses like in the fog scene going back and surviving, and like everyone is still just like,
That's right.
No one does anything about it or taking the situation seriously except for these two children and, you know, the half-drunk uncle.
You're completely correct, because that is a bit of a loose end they just kind of drop.
Yeah, and so if there was a little bit more of, you know, nuance and the monster did stay in the shadows more, maybe if that's what Stephen King originally wanted, and even more so, and just people are disappearing and then all these clues add up, that builds the tension more smoothly, in my personal opinion, and that would fit with my personal taste as well.
Right.
All right. Next up is David with a 6.5.
Which is you.
That is me. I am echoing AJ on this one, and this one was a hard one to score because
your marriage is at stake.
Yeah. You see,
that's it. David's celebrating.
not only did you rate it below
Tomb of the
a
Dragon
7,
Emperor, yes.
you rated it below Tomb of the Dragon Emperor.
Hey, wait, give him
think
some
about
credit.
that.
This movie did not have Yetis playing football.
I
didn't.
Yeah,
But it did have a werewolf playing baseball.
That's true.
That's true.
Yeah, you should
About
bump it up a
people.
0.5.
It's about as close as we're gonna get, honestly, to Yetis playing football. Is werewolves playing baseball? But it was difficult because I think I have a foot in both camps. So I joined the Halloween party regime. Years ago.
It's a regime.
Club. Let's just call it a club.
The club. It was a club.
club.
It's a festival of sorts of Stephen King movies, and I definitely got the charm the first time. But I think I could pick up on some of the campiness, the cheesiness that it didn't quite have the same effect because I didn't grow up with it. But as you watch it with people who have that vision, it kind of grows on you in that same way. You can see it from those perspectives. And so, I feel like I'm able to watch it through that lens almost from a distance. It's really weird to say. But I think this is the first time I've seen it outside of October ever. It was kind of weird.
I know, it was weird.
And I think when it came down to it, and trying to do it analytically, kind of what you were saying, Reese, you've watched it so many times that you're finally sitting down to really sort of focus on it.
Yeah.
And there's some jarring moments as far as how it's put together. There are moments where I feel like it could have been done better. I can see where the vision is, and I love Stephen King. So, I've read his books. I've seen a lot of his movies in my life. I know where he's coming from. And there's just certain points that miss. And in the end, the reason this is it's positive, is the storytelling that Stephen King does with the characters. I don't think anyone could fault it for how he pieces it together. I think the music is a bit on and off. The horror, for me, doesn't land at all, almost. It's charming, but not scary at
Your
all.
horror is charming.
I am a baby with scary movies, and this.
Well, that's one thing to note about Stephen King's, or the movies I've seen of Stephen King in general, is that they're not particularly scary ever, but it's more the idea of everything.
And I also think it's the age you watch it and the environment, and I can see as a child this being very scary, but accessible. It's not like showing somebody a horror movie nowadays. Like you're time to watch The Conjuring, 5-year-old. Not gonna fly. But I could see Silver Bullet sliding in there, and it's a good entryway into horror, I would say.
Yeah.
But in the end, if I base this off of, it says rated R on the screen, which I guess for horror.
It's for violence,
elements.
probably.
Yeah. But I would say outside of October, easy 6.5. Inside of October, easy 9. Like I think it's
that makes sense. It's
does.
within the context of where you're watching.
When you're surrounded by Halloween, it's good.
Appeal.
Imagine being at home with your family and friends. You have cookies going. You have dim lighting. You have the spooky music and all the Halloween stuff. You have a fire going in the fireplace.
All the Halloween trappings.
Yeah, you have cocoa. And it's cold outside, and you hear the music coming on. Like it definitely evokes the emotion of
it is a mood
the
film.
holiday.
So Halloween is hokey, so is this movie.
Exactly. I couldn't recommend it more for somebody who wants a good October lighthearted film
with werewolves. Yeah.
Yeah, very kid friendly.
So what's your score?
6.5.
6.5. All right.
Sad. I'm just
Last
kidding.
score. I think we know.
I think we know who it is. Catherine,
boy.
with a 12.
No.
With
Yes,
an 8.5.
All right.
Yes.
Hey, high five.
Exactly.
My mom and I are simpatico.
So apart from the things about the film that are dated, as far as the filming and special effects and things like that, I'm close enough.
Yep.
The messages are really poignant. I find that the characters are complex. I really like complex characters, and when they're displayed well and exemplified, there is much that can be learned from the people who watch these films for that kind of character development. So the character of Marty, who is kind of a pure one, who can't help the condition that he's born into, and how he deals with it is very helpful. The character of his sister, who is a little bit embittered by the fact that he has this character flaw, which is a physical one, and she has to come forth. So her growth and development is important for people to learn from. The parents who are trying to just make this family work. When you look at it from family structures and from depth of philosophy about a human character, even from the werewolf, you see that he is a person of passion, and that he struggles with it. So recognizing that people all have these things that they struggle with, and how they react to them and how they deal with them is kind of an important thing in this movie. So I think it can impart that to all people. That's all I would say. So
All
I really
right.
love this film. That's why
8.5
Yes.
out of 10. All right, AJ, you want to crunch those numbers for this highly nostalgic, possibly biased episode?
Crunch him like the werewolf crunches Chad.
Yes.
All right, so our group average, including celebrity appearance, we have a 7.7.
Nice.
Our group average for core crew for overall ranking purposes is 7.5, which ties it with Blade.
All right.
And puts it
I'll take
above
that.
The Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian, which had a 7.4.
I agree.
And a 7.6. We had a three-way tie for The Chronicles of Narnia. The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Atlantis, The Lost Empire, and Jason and the Argonauts.
All right.
Interesting.
Nice. Good. I think that's good company for this
Yeah.
movie. I'm happy with that. I know
Me too.
A couple of us didn't enjoy it as much, but I think that's a fair middle ground for Silver Bullet.
I agree.
Okay, let's get into what critics thought. This is where it gets a little upset.
Harrier.
Yes. So on Rotten Tomatoes, critics gave this a 45% approval rate.
Oh, that's
Well,
too
they're totally
low.
wrong. They don't see the depth.
The butts.
Yep, which is mixed. It's not
Yeah,
that that sounds bad on
No,
They're all
Rotten
no.
Catholic
Tomatoes.
priests.
Yeah, but what?
Go ahead, Reese.
Yeah, that sounds bad, but it's actually more in the mixed range where
Right.
half of them liked it, half of them didn't, pretty much. And the audience score is a 56%, so a little more positive than the critics, but still not quite in the green zone that we'd like it to be. On Metacritic, now this is going to sound alarming, but mind you, for this Metacritic score, it was only from 7 or so critics, which normally it's like 50. So we have a score of 26 out of 100.
Dude,
We can
you
just
know what
ignore
this
those
is?
people.
This is all the people, like, the people that like this movie decided, I don't need to give this a review, it's from 1985. And then the people that didn't like this movie were like, I hate this movie.
So what's
I
funny-
want to lower it.
What's funny, I think most of the reviews were negative for this, but Roger Ebert was positive.
Which
There you go.
Yeah,
is interesting.
yeah, he gave it like 3.5 out of 5 or something.
3
like
out of
that.
5.
I think it was 3.5.
I looked at it.
Check it, David.
I have it open.
Check it
I have it
again.
open on my phone.
I'll be the
check
neutral
it
fact
now.
checker.
No, we're waiting. I have to wait for this. I have to know.
Yep, 3.
3
I told you 3 out of
out
5.
of how many?
3 out of 5.
Okay, still positive.
3 out of 3.5 stars.
I'll take that slightly positive review from Roger Ebert.
The
for this.
first line from him is, "It's either the worst movie ever made from a Stephen King story or the funniest."
Yes.
I actually think it's in between those two, but okay. All right, so 26 on Metacritic with a audience score that's actually positive of 7.2 out of 10.
Wow.
This movie's kind of all across the board. On IMDb, it has a 6.4 out of
Right.
10, which is like barely positive, I would say.
that.
So overall, I would say the audience scores are mixed to positive, while the critics' scores are mixed to negative. So it's kind of a, if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. So that's Silver Bullet. I do want to note that this movie does have a pretty substantial cult following. Shout Factory re-released the Blu-ray for this movie, and it comes with a whole bunch of special features.
Wow.
Shout Factory releases a whole bunch of kind of cult hit Blu-rays, and Silver Bullet was one of them. When we started covering this, I was like, yeah, this is finally time for me to cover this and purchase it. I'm going to buy this thing because of this
Yes.
episode. So yeah, mixed negative to mixed positive for this one. No one's insanely negative on it.
Right.
And no one is insanely positive on it. It's kind of just completely middle range for Silver Bullet, but it does have that cult following, which is always nice.
And it kind of makes sense because this movie came out in 1985, which is kind of in the midst of the Stephen King craze where everyone's super into the movies coming out.
Yeah.
And I can see
cocaine.
how this would be kind of a disappointment
Yeah.
compared to what the audience has received beforehand.
Yeah. And it's nice that we have David and AJ on this because they do give us that insight into, maybe that is why this has a polarizing response for
Right.
audiences.
And I feel like
so we-
monster movies in general get pigeonholed, so
Yes.
they're already in their own kind of isolated pocket.
Right.
Yeah. I'm glad we have the separation there, and I'm glad we have the added perspective on this one, because otherwise this would just be an episode
We would
just
just be
praising
basking
Silver
in
Bullet.
Silver Bullet.
And,
Like, it is
and
the greatest
any
movie
listeners
ever
would be
made.
like, what are these people? What are these people on?
I gotta say, I think out of all the things I've listened to, we're one of the more positive reviews out there.
Yeah,
I think
honestly,
so.
this is probably the most attention Silver Bullet has ever had.
Oh, yeah.
It's a
But the
lot
thing
harder to
is, like,
find stuff on this movie.
I do
Yes,
think
Silver
that
Bullet.
this is kind of like a diamond in the rough, like
It is.
one of those cult classic type things. You know
Yes.
what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think if Gary Busey wasn't in this movie, it definitely would have
Oh, yeah.
kind of
It's
fallen through the cracks.
true.
Yeah.
He does add a whole lot of
Yeah,
character.
he's
to
the
this
beating
film.
heart of this movie. I love him in every
Yeah.
scene. I'm so glad they let him improv throughout most of this because
I
it's just
yeah.
so agree.
it's gold. All right, moving on to the box office. This movie released on October 11th in 1985. Also playing in theaters at the time were Commando, that Arnold Schwarzenegger vehicle, and Back to the Future.
Wow.
Commando was a more recent release, and Back to the Future had been playing for a little while.
Another Marty movie.
Yeah, there you go, Marty McFly. The budget of this movie at the time was $7 million, but when you inflate it to today's dollars, that is closer to $17 million. What do you think this movie did worldwide at the box office? And Mom, I'm gonna have you go last, just because you
Thanks.
have no idea about box
Yeah, I
office
have
stuff.
no clue.
So I'll let you kind of listen, and I'll let you make your own educated guess based off what everyone else is saying.
Inflated or not?
Uneducated.
We're gonna go for the inflated guess.
So
for
is
this
17 million inflated already?
Yeah, so 17 million budget, released during the time of Commando and Back to the Future, 1985. What is it inflated to today? David.
So it's definitely, I wouldn't call this cheating, but I did hear, and so I can let everyone else know since I'm going first, that I know that it didn't do well. I don't know what the numbers are, but I know that it didn't do great.
All right.
Well, I mean, being a cult classic implies that it didn't do well.
Yeah.
Fine. I heard people weren't flocking to it. So I'm going to go with 22.
22?
It made its money.
That's
Cut
a
it
good,
out.
a good guess. All right, Arena.
24.
24. So we got 22 and 24. AJ.
Man, I'm right in line. 25.
25.
Oh, Irina's boxed in there.
All right. Noah.
I guess I'll go high then. I bet
26.
30. Yeah, 26. No.
This is not The Price is Right, guys.
I'll do 33 on this one.
33.
Bob.
All right. Mom.
All right, 20.
20.
Ah,
Finally, it has worked out for Noah.
Suck it!
This movie grossed an inflated 31 million.
All right.
Yep. So it almost doubled its budget.
Wow.
It was
That's
not
crazy.
a insanely terrible bomb, but it did not do nearly as well as they were hoping it to.
Right.
Again, Stephen King was a kind of hot commodity at this point, and all of his adaptations were doing really well at the box office. So this seemed like it was going to be kind of a surefire hit just based off the name alone.
Right.
But it was poorly advertised, and it not very critically well received, so it kind of flopped at the box office.
So what's that in 85 numbers?
85 numbers, it was 31 million. That's the inflated budget.
Non-inflated.
Before that, it was 12 million. So 7 million budget, 12 million worldwide box office.
All right.
I will say that the 12 million comes from domestic box office, and the worldwide, no matter how much I researched, I could not find a worldwide box office. It's not reported. I don't know if it played anywhere worldwide, but it you just can't find that information. But I still, it was a loss for them. Mm-hmm. So it did not make its money back.
Oh, so you lied to us.
Yeah, I lied. I lied. That's what you can get out of that. All right.
I demand a recount.
So Noah finally gets a win, a much
After being
deserved win.
boxed in 1,000 bajillion times.
Yeah, he was always boxed in. All right, franchise potential for this one. There's not a lot here, but back in 2003, it was reported on a website, bloodydisgusting.com. And here's a quote. There are plans to make a Silver Bullet 2 with Stephen King as a consultant, but he will have nothing to do with the writing duties. The story will revolve around Corey Haim's character all growing up in the same small town. Corey Haim's character growing up in the same small town as the original with some new cast. The details have yet to be worked out, but it looks like that might happen. But for the big news that I know everyone will love to finally hear, Pet Sematary 3 is a go. By the way, that never happened. Go. We're going on a script that was written back in '93 when plans for Pet Sematary 3 were shelved. Like Part 2, Pet Sematary 3 will have nothing to do with the one before. Mary Lambert is in talks to direct this, but we are looking into other directors in case she passes. Filming plans to start in April for sometime later for sometime later in the fall for release. Please get the word out. The more anticipation will help this film in the long run. I don't want to see this film killed before it starts again. Same for Silver Bullet 2. So that
was back in 2003.
Let's get the word out.
We don't want this to die, guys.
Yeah, so they were trying to make a sequel happen to this movie, although it doesn't seem like they were trying that hard.
Right.
It seems like they were more banking on a Pet Sematary 3 and Silver Bullet 2, like, oh, maybe that will happen.
Yeah.
Hopefully. So that's a very kind of tenuous thread we have there for the franchise talk here, but it's there. We just wanted
Sounds
to talk
like they
about
were,
Silver Bullet.
Hoping Pet Sematary would be the prop up for the franchise here.
I think that even still, though, just having the name grab of Stephen King is potential for franchise at all, you know?
Yeah.
Because and we'll probably talk about this in the future of this segment of our podcast, but it seems like there was a Stephen King hype, kind of similar to where there was a Peter Benchley hype with Jaws and all his other books that he wrote. Mm-hmm. And there's a bit of a Stephen King revival lately as well, which you have probably seen.
He's never not been popular.
Right.
But now it seems like they're really trying to adapt all these things again in a big way. Yeah, you're right. And honestly, yes, this is one of those movies where as much as I am nostalgic for Silver Bullet, remake it.
Yeah, I would love to see a remake. Yeah.
And as I stated earlier, I want it to be a detective procedural movie.
Yeah.
Where we have detectives investigating these crimes, and they look especially vicious and bloody, and it turns out it's a werewolf. That's what I want this to be. Like, and they can still maintain that small town vibe.
Right.
It's interesting that... Yeah, go ahead.
No, that's it. I didn't have anything else.
It's interesting the director went on to write for TV shows that are some of the best TV shows for procedurals.
Like
The Wire. It's crazy. But yeah, I want to see more from Silver Bullet. It doesn't have to be connected to this first film. I just want to see a good werewolf procedural movie. Please do that. That'd be so cool. So yeah, Silver Bullet dies here. I don't even think we have to do an honorable or dishonorable death for this one. It's clearly honorable.
Yeah.
It's its own self-contained story. So we'll just slap an honorable on this one.
But is Marty dead or alive?
Yeah. So
where's he a werewolf? Or is Uncle Red a werewolf because he got scratched?
They're all werewolves. There you go. There's a loose end there. All right. That ends our episode. Thank you, Mom, for being a part of this.
Thank you for having me. I truly enjoyed it.
Good.
Yay, when we enjoyed having you on. It wouldn't feel the same talking Silver Bullet without you. All right, that concludes our discussions on Silver Bullet. Next week, we will be talking about It.
Wait. We'll be talking about what?
You know, It.
Yeah, what is it?
It?
But
It.
What? Yeah, but what's
I don't get it.
I don't get it.
It.
It?
Okay.
What is it?
We will be talking about It, not the miniseries, the theatrical release, and then
the new one.
Chapter 2. Yes,
Though
the new one.
It would be nice if people would watch the original one before watching this one. That way...
Well, it sounds like we might
They're
have
not
to
clowning
watch
around.
It already.
Irene, are you going to do the homework and watch the original?
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to do
I
it
love
as
that
well.
miniseries.
All right, guys.
All right.
Tim
Watching
Curry
party
can't
over here.
miss it.
I'm actually looking forward to it because I've heard that miniseries doesn't quite hold up, but Tim Curry does. So we'll see.
Similar to Gary Busey, Tim Curry is the character that you are really there for.
All right.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Next week, for the third, fourth, fifth time, we are talking about It, and thus concludes this episode.
I still don't understand.
Yes, you do.
Goodbye, guys.
Bye.
Oh, I got it perfectly. I hate you, you booger.